Heading into my junior year of college, I became aware that I was being haunted. Oh yeah, not like that. Y'all thought it was going to get weird. I was haunted by this dawning reality that all my life I had been on what I thought was a path. That if I reached certain marks and then advanced to the next one, at some point I would arrive at meaning, significance, purpose, deep, abiding satisfaction. It was about junior year that I realized that I'd been on this path for a while, and every time I got to one of those markers, another one just appeared further ahead. Like some of you, I realized that getting into a certain school was my goal, and yet the moment that I stepped foot on that campus, it felt like just another hill to climb. Junior year, as I began to think about grad school and what I would do next and all those things, this other mountain appeared. And then I thought my thing was I wanted to go to law school, and so I thought, man, even if I get into the right law school, I'm going to need to get the right clerkship, and I'm going to need to get the right position at the right law firm, and then maybe when I made partner, that would be the moment. And yet the more that I ran on this path, the more disillusionment came, the more I was haunted by this dawning reality, this dawning fear of meaninglessness. That what I was doing was never going to be a moment of arrival. In fact, this path that I was on really began to feel more like a treadmill. I was running fast, and yet when I would look around for the things that I desired most, I realized I hadn't moved any closer to them at all. In fact, it felt like with each movement, there was just a little bit less of me there. There was this not quite crushing feeling, but this awareness that maybe the tedium of the path was all there was to life. What I also felt, though, equally haunted by, were these moments where I would glimpse something. A moment with friends. A moment of achievement. A moment on an athletic field that felt like, oh, maybe there it is. Maybe that's it. And then it would fly away. These fleeting moments equally haunted me because it was like a pinprick against the meaninglessness that I would look through for a second and then it'd be covered up. Believe it or not, this dynamic, this fear of meaninglessness, this fear, as the title of my talk is, that ultimately life would be marked not necessarily by failure, not necessarily by tragedy, though certainly I wanted to avoid that, avoid really any discomfort. My fear was that life would be largely characterized by boredom, by just being bored along the way. I've never heard this better expressed than in a song that most of you probably know. What's next? And then what?
I'm gonna swing.
Okay. I love this song. But one day I went, as I often do, when I hear something in a song and I'm like, wait a second. Right? Because this song kind of, right? It gets you going. It's in your head right now. You feel it right now. And yet I heard something from it. In the second verse, I said, did she just say what I thought she said? Here are the lyrics to that song. It says, party girls don't get hurt. Can't feel anything. When will I learn? I push it down, push it down. I'm the one for a good time call. Phone's blowing up, ringing my doorbell. I feel the love, feel the love. Do you hear this mingled reality here? There's this thing that she glimpses in a moment that she's after. I'm the one for a good time call. I feel love in this moment. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, drink. Then it goes on. It says, I'm going to fly like a bird through the night. Feel my tears as they dry. But I'm holding on for dear life, won't look down, won't open my eyes. And then this is what I thought I heard. Sun is up, I'm a mess, gotta get on out, gotta run from this. Here comes the shame, here comes the shame. So she experiences something after a night where she's maybe, just maybe, glimpsed something. She's swinging from a chandelier, a sign of opulence and glamour after all. And maybe as she's swinging, she hears the applause from those below her, and there's something gained that morning. And yet the next morning she wakes up and she realizes that this thing, this lifestyle, this pursuit is ultimately destroying her. Sun is up, I'm a mess. Gotta get on out, gotta run from this. Here comes the shame, here comes the shame. And you know what the next line is? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, this is largely my story in college, is that there was something in that universe that I would glimpse for a moment that was fleeting, that the more I pursued it, the more I realized it was destroying me, and yet I couldn't stop, like this singer. I couldn't stop swinging from the chandelier. I couldn't stop pursuing it because it was the only thing that I needed to pursue. It was the only place that I knew to go. There's an author, anybody who knows me will laugh. There's an author that I love, C.S. Lewis, who named this for me. He named this. I actually read something that year that literally changed my life because it named this. C.S. Lewis calls this a longing that never fully satisfies, that when we actually experience it, it points beyond itself in an almost cruel way. And he says that the more that we pursue these things, it's like we're pounding our fists up against a brick wall that won't move, and yet it's the only place we know to go. And so as our hands get bloodied, we just keep pounding. Lewis puts it in such beautiful language. He says, these experiences, are only the scent of a flower we have not found, the echo of a tune we have not heard, news from a country we have never yet visited. And part of the bitterness which mixes with the sweetness of that message is due to the fact that it so seldom seems to be a message intended for us, but rather something we have overheard. By bitterness, I mean pain, not resentment. We should hardly dare to ask that any notice be taken of us, but we pine. What a great word to describe this longing, this sense. We pine. The sense that in this universe we are treated as strangers. The longing to be acknowledged, to meet with some response, to bridge some chasm that yawns between us and reality is part of our inconsolable secret. Bitterness mixed with sweetness in these moments. I wonder if you've ever experienced this in a moment, in a night, in even a moment of arriving on this campus that felt so far off and now you're here. I wonder if it was bitterness mixed with sweetness. Where do we go with that? What do we do with that? What Lewis says is, well, if there's this desire that we have, that nothing in this world quite satisfies, that nothing lives up to, maybe, just maybe, it's not meant to be satisfied in this world. And he makes this great argument. He says, now you might say that a man who is hungry at sea isn't necessarily going to get bread. He might die of starvation. And yet, he then makes this argument. But surely a man's hunger does prove that he comes of a race which repairs its body by eating, and inhabits a world where eatable substances exist. In the same way, though I do not believe, I wish I did, that my desire for paradise proves that I shall enjoy it, I think it a pretty good indication that such a thing exists, and that some men will. A man may love a woman and not win her, but it would be very odd if the phenomenon called falling in love occurred in a sexless world. That to me was like, he puts this in another one of his writings. He says, if we find in ourselves a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, maybe the only rational conclusion is that we were made for another world. My modification of that would be you'll hear why in a second, is we were made for this world, but not as it currently exists. See, this is the Christian message. This is what changed my life. To know that I indeed was made for more. There is something that now I'm willing to use this language, back then it would have been strange, that my soul, there is something that my soul was made to long for. And that thing, rather than a wall that I was to bang my hand against, I was to understand that as a signpost to the very thing that I was created for. And what Christian faith says is that we were made for a person and a place. And that right now, because of the story of humanity, broken, each of us turning from God, each of us pounding our fists against some other wall that we were never made to find satisfaction from, because of that, we are separated both from the person we were made for and the place that we were made for. You see, that person is the one who actually came, and this is, to me, what made Christianity so unique, that God was not, it's too easy to call these longings just a longing for transcendence, as if that covers the matter. Oh, well, maybe we're just to hope that this world is not older. What's unique about the Christian message is it says that the transcendent God came close. That the transcendent God took on the same flesh that we have, felt everything that we felt, and came to make right what had radically gone wrong. That Jesus on the cross felt every moment of shame that we resonate with in that song. I heard someone say this summer, this was mind-blowing to me, that imagine, especially for those of you who understand Christian faith and have experienced it in some way. Imagine that moment right after you mess up and the shame that you feel, the disappointment that you feel, I hope no one ever finds this out. Bottle up every moment of that experience of your life, and that was placed upon Jesus at the cross. When he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? He took it on himself. And we may think that, okay, the story ends there. The shame, the death, this tragedy that we see all around us ends there, but that's not the final chapter. Instead, Jesus was raised, showing that God was well pleased with his sacrifice, showing that what Jesus had done was, in fact, worthy of being the means by which we might be connected to this person. And it was the first act of the world as it was intended to be. I love this, that the resurrection of Jesus is not some bizarre event in the middle of history that's just like, okay, that happened. A dead dude wasn't dead anymore, so I don't even know where to go with that, right? No society has ever thought that was normal. No society was like, well, naturally, you know. Instead, what Christianity says, what I learned, what was so compelling to me, was that Jesus' resurrection, life defeating death, is where this whole thing is headed. And that Jesus' moment of resurrection was like that future being pulled into this present moment and placed right there in the middle of history to say, death, shame, meaninglessness, not the final chapter. This is the final chapter. You see, we were made for a better place. And this is also where deep meaning and purpose comes from. Because this is what our lives are about. This is the mission of God's people. This is what my life was set to in that moment. Something bigger than just me experiencing a moment of joy and elation and happiness for a second and then just working for the weekend again. But instead, we're called to put our hands to the plow and pull forth in the same way that Jesus' resurrection did. The Bible says that we're given the Spirit of God that did that raised Jesus from the... That's in us, and every time that we're in tune with Him, every time that we do something, self-sacrifice, service, loving someone, taking care of the environment, stewarding things well, that we are pulling that future place into the present moment. Heaven is meeting earth in that moment. Lewis goes on to say this. He says, apparently then, our lifelong nostalgia, our longing to be reunited with something in the universe from which we now feel cut off, to be on the inside of some door, which we have always seen from the outside, is no mere neurotic fancy, but the truest index of our real situation. To be at last summoned inside would be both glory and honor beyond all our merits, and also the healing of that old ache. Lewis says there is someone that you were made for, that there is a relationship that you were made for, who provides the cosmic well done for which so many of you are laboring your whole lives to hear from any of a number of people. He says that that is yours in Jesus. That God speaks over anyone who unites themselves to you, who says, yeah, I want in on that. God speaks over you, loved, accepted, enough. Lewis calls this the divine accolade. That God, for a moment, delights over you and says, he's mine, she's mine, and I love them, and they are enough, they are sufficient, and they are welcomed in. And then he also says that this is what life is about. Not fleeting moments of joy mixed with this tedium of meaninglessness. Why am I studying again? Why am I getting another inch? What am I doing here? He says, no, we have been given a mission to be a part of this new creation project that God is doing in the world. This is what PFA cares about. We are a ministry that loves to call one another to relate to this God as if he's real. The book that we'll study in Bible courses, which I can't commend highly enough to you, that's where it's at, guys. That's where it happens in PFA. We're studying a book in Hebrews where it says, anyone who draws near to God must believe, so simple, that he exists. And that he rewards those who seek him. And that reward is not the things that we normally bang against the wall to get. It's this divine accolade. It's his presence. It's him saying, well done, good and faithful servant, just as you are. And then he says, come, I've got a job for you. PFA, we are a missional people. That's why y'all freshmen have probably talked to like 8 PFA upperclassmen. We hit it hard on this campus because we want to see that new creation pulled into this place, our day. Not to wait for some other time. Not to wait for someone else to do it. This is our job. This is what we've been called to. And not alone, together. This beautiful community that we have. We want to do something here. And so we put our hands to the plow and we work hard as God's people. We are risk takers in this ministry in the best kinds of ways. Not in weird, wonky ways, but in the best kinds of ways to say, if God's going to do something, that's on us because we're his people and we have this mission. One of my favorite things that Lewis says in another place, I promise you we'd have a lot of Lewis following through on my promise, is, let me say this first, let me not overstate what we're talking about here. These realities remain veiled to us because we remain in a world that is not the way that it's supposed to be. I was talking about this to our teaching fellow, Mark Calvin, and we were talking about how would you illustrate this relationality that we have to God, and yet the Bible says that we're awaiting a day when we will see him face to face. And the best that we could come up with was, it's like being in a hospital bed. And your beloved is with you. Your mom, your dad, whoever you love is with you. And you're able to relate, but you're sick, so maybe you're anesthetized, and so you're a little groggy. You're not where life with this person is meant to happen. You're not home with them, and yet it's sweet that they're there in that moment. That's the kind of relationship that we have with God. That's why it's based on faith, because there is a veiledness to it. This place, guys, some of you realize this week with things that you've seen and experienced, maybe some things that you've done that you never imagined doing here. You've seen that it's a broken place, Princeton, and this entire world. This is a broken down palace. I once heard a theologian put it. Right? We look around and we see brilliance. We see creation. We see the ingenuity of man. We say, wow, there's so much beauty in the world. And yet, right? It's cliche, but you turn on the news. The world is a mess right now. But we're called to invest in those ruins. Because we are this world's best shot of being what it's meant to be. Being what it will one day be. And that gives life purpose and excitement and enthusiasm. Here's the deal, guys. You can see the tedium and meaninglessness and this pursuit of whatever you're after while you're here as the sum total of what life is, which is ultimately a devastating dead end. You can see the good stuff, those moments, those chandelier moments, as life, as good as it gets. Or you can hear something, and I just challenge you to consider this. That maybe what's deeper in you is this reality that the world is not the way it's supposed to be. This is not how life was meant to be. And that those moments feel far truer than anything else. Feel far more like, man, there's something there that awakens something deep in me that says, that's it. That's how it's supposed to be. Lewis in another place says, we do not want merely to see beauty. We want something else which can hardly be put into words. To be united with the beauty we see. To pass into it. To receive it into ourselves. To bathe in it. To become part of it. Do you know this moment? When you see something and it's like, I'm glad I can see it. I'm trying to remember. Or a moment that you experience as, I have to mention my sons because I do in every talk. A moment with my son that I just try and do the mental picture taken with and say, oh, that I could just wrap my arms around this moment and keep it forever. Lewis says that's what it's like to really behold this. And one of my favorite things that the entire Bible says, an Old Testament prophet with a weird name, Habakkuk, he says that one day the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the seas. As the waters cover the seas, so this presence and awareness of God will one day pervade every ounce of this world. And for those of us who have glimpsed this, for those of us who have knocked on this door, and the beautiful truth that the Bible tells us, we're not just knocking, but that there's actually one knocking on the other side, begging us to know that he's there. As we knock on that door, and we are received into this incredible relationship, though now veiled, one day, because of what this says, because of the pervasiveness of God's presence in this world, we will finally be home. We will finally be home. So would you join me in pursuing this wonderful God, this wonderful Savior Jesus who we sang so compellingly about? Would you join me in this beautiful mission that he's given us? Because this world is bursting with meaning and significance.